Sarah has been really active going into different schools and policy-making bodies across Zimbabwe and trying to bring holistic decision-making to them, to sort of get them to sort of move away from a reductionistic way of thinking about the decisions and what they're bringing into that decision-making process. So she's just going to share a little bit about how she tries to get people to think differently and kind of give them some cues to make decisions in a different way and kind of educate them about what they're doing now versus what they could be doing.
Oh yeah, so this is one I was just working on yesterday. I like to draw things in my head because it's got to be clearer for people, because it's clear in my head but it's not clear. Obviously I can see when people are like, well, no, I already think in a bigger picture, and I'm like, no, it's where the decision is made that has to be decided in a bigger context. So this is just, I drew this out yesterday. Our world today, social, economic and environmental collapse because we focus our actions on our problems. So we zoom down and decide our actions on our problems. So what we were talking about just now, I'll read out a few. It's like pro-culling, pro-burning, anti-culling, anti-flying, climate deniers, climate activists, vegans, non-vegans, pro-hunting, planting trees, eat less meat. I can't read that one upside down. Oh, anti-burning, do this, do that. So who has a better idea? Who's right? Who's wrong? And these red lines just depict conflict. So we're all in conflict. And this person's in conflict with all of these, and these people represent individuals and organizations. So our world is in chaos and conflict because we are ignoring the fact that every decision we make affects our environment. So everything we're doing here is just going to knock on further to our environment, even though we mean well. And these are the symptoms I wrote out. So for me, the biggest by far is desertification, which leads to poverty, megafires, floods, droughts, poaching, social breakdown, biodiversity loss, violence, mass immigration to cities, and our climate changing. And then the other symptoms are rapid burning of fossil fuels, GMOs, factory farms, industrial agriculture, carbon, methane. These are all things we argue about. Economic collapse, leaderless chaos, confusion, fear, hatred, conflict. So this is what our decision making is doing to us. And we're not doing it to each other on purpose. We do this genetically. It's an absolute natural way of making decisions. We don't know any better, so we have to be taught it. So that was what happens when we've got no common context, because I guarantee you, like I said just now, all these people want the same thing. They're all fighting for a better planet. None of us want to live in violence and conflict. I don't think there's a human on the planet that wants to live in a horrible life. So then I drew out a global holistic context, and I'll just read it out to you. So this bit in the middle says, we want stable families living peaceful lives in prosperity and physical security while free to pursue our own spiritual or religious beliefs. We want access to nutritious food and clean water. We want to enjoy good education and health, living balanced lives with time for family, friends, and leisure for cultural and other pursuits. All this is to be ensured for many generations to come on a foundation of regenerating soils and biologically diverse communities on Earth's land and in her rivers, lakes, and oceans, which will be brought about by our being ethical and humane to all life, being open, tolerant, non-judgmental, honest, and respectful, ensuring mutual respect and support for team humanity as we live with each other and our environment in harmony. So that's just a global holistic context that any anti-hunter, poacher, big organization, economist, cultural, all cultures, all religions, all colors, vegans, climate activists. So I've put all these people now in a circle with a common holistic context. In spite of our differences, we can still make decisions towards this. And when this becomes a government level thing, like developing policies, if you hold that, I'll put this over here. I drew this out a while ago to show how all governments develop policies right now, and it's the same. I could have drawn it a bit like that other drawing actually, but so what I said earlier is that you cannot manage land in isolation from our economy or from our cultures. Yet we have a Ministry of Environment, we have a Ministry of Finance, we have a Ministry of Social Welfare, we have a Ministry of Agriculture. So all these ministries are reducing and separating their decisions for their different ministries with no consideration to the knock-on effects to the other ministries. So of course we end up with reductionist policies. And this is the same thing. This was my original thing with the government. So if you suddenly have a holistic context for a whole country, and each ministry is developing policy towards this context and checking that the policy decisions will lead them towards this context and not away from it, we'd have a very, very different picture very quickly. And I don't know how long the videos, do I have time to put that other one? Because I think this is a good one quickly, the one that I showed you. Because I like visuals. Is that one? Do you think I should do that?
That's it.
So, and then with regards to just one policy being developed by one ministry, I'll just show you the potential knock-on effects. And so our primitive decision-making process or reason for all our human actions is to meet our needs, desires, or to address our problems. And as an individual, how does that work? We just say, we think here, we don't think beyond that, and we say, I need food. And the action most humans, not all anymore, use is to go to a supermarket and buy bread or cereal, vegetables, fruit or meat. Those are common decisions that we make as individuals. And the consequences is mostly supporting mainstream agriculture, which is killing our soil and poisoning our land, rivers and food. It's economic, social and environmental disaster globally. So this is what I try and show when I'm educating children and adults, is that our decisions will automatically have economic, social and environmental consequences, because anything that affects our environment affects us socially and economically. So then using the same decision-making process but now at a government level, so the government's objective is people need food, and that will fall on the Ministry of Agriculture. And the action that will come of that, because we're not thinking any further than people needing food, is mass produce food as fast and cheaply as possible. So we just want to produce food for the country. And that's what's resulted in industrial agriculture. It's not because individuals are bad, it's because when we form an organization, it makes inhumane decisions. So the consequence of making our policies towards our problems or needs is inhumane, environmentally lethal industrial food production and an agricultural policy that promotes chemicals and the corporate marketing of oil and technology, economic, social, environmental disaster globally. You can go on to say GMO crops, all of these things that are not, monocultures. You can see why the decision is not humane and it's nothing an individual would have made. So if that same government now and this ministry, they have a new holistic context for all future human actions, and the context is a profound description of how you want your life to be, what behaviors would bring that life about, and all tied to the health of our life-supporting environment, because nothing can survive without green plants growing on regenerating soils. So we cannot survive if we don't have healthy soils out there. No life form can survive. So then we have a holistic context, which I read just now, within which the health of our environment is paramount. So the individual, I need food. Now I'm going to check that anything I buy is in line with this context. So the action will be check that my food choices are in line with my holistic context. If not, source from food from somewhere else. So you're always looking for a better choice. And then the consequences of that will be individuals, people supporting farmers who promote soil health by using holistic decision making with regenerative tools and practices. So you've immediately got people supporting better practices, more biological farmers, healthier land. Now the government comes along with their same decision. People need food, but now they're making that decision within a different context. They're not just making that decision, they're checking that it's in line with their holistic context. So their action will check that all agricultural policy suggestions are in line with the national holistic context and are simultaneously socially, culturally, economically, and environmentally sound. So you immediately have the same need, but you have a different context to decide your action. And the consequences of that would be a new agricultural policy that promotes soil health and regenerative tools and practices and humane treatment of all animals. So you would immediately get rid of factory farms, you'd go to regenerative practices, healthy soils, etc. So you can just see how just changing to a more profound context makes all the difference in the world. But we do not do this naturally, so it takes a lot of practice. So individuals, I'm going to do context developing workshops. This, you have to be really invested in this from the heart, and then you test your decisions, every single decision against that, and soon it becomes second nature. And then we need our governments making their decisions like this, and organizations, and taking everybody out of conflict.
Some water.
Try it. Sure.
So just two quick questions. For you, what are the things that are making you feel optimistic these days?
What makes me feel optimistic is when I teach children, obviously, because they're so enthusiastic and they catch on very quickly. The other thing that's making me feel very optimistic in Zimbabwe in particular is this big mobilization we're having in Wangi communal lands, where it's really starting to go on a big scale, so we can use that as an example for other communities to visit and to see how it's going. And just, I think the general, there's just a general movement towards a consciousness of doing more regenerative things, but I would like the world to remember that all these things that we're calling regenerative have been done before in the past. So what we need to change is the decision making that decides when a practice is appropriate, because we have many thousands of great practices out there, but we're not using them at the right time in the right place for the right reasons. And that's why the regenerative agriculture and grass-fed beef and grazing plans and everything we had of the past led to failure of over 20 civilizations, because the management, the decision-making process was still reductionist and causing knock-on effects, even though some of the practices were good. So we're all dealing with completely different complexities. No two people are ever going to be dealing with the same complexity twice. So what holistic management does is allow you to flow with that complexity. And the holistic plan grazing is not a grazing plan. I cannot drive that home, or you cannot just take your cattle and have a grazing plan, because nothing in nature is constant, it's always flowing. So it's got to be a grazing process where you're constantly monitoring, controlling, and watching the land and flowing with the land. So the grazing process, holistic plan grazing process, goes with the decision making, and those two things, then you'll have consistent results. And if you don't manage land holistic, if you just develop your holistic context and constantly check your decisions are in line with that and leading you to that, leading you towards a healthy environment rather than away from it, then you'll start to change the world.
Well, onto that, what can we do to support you in your work? Is there anything that people who are watching today can do to support you?
Yeah, well, any questions or anything you want to know, get in touch with me. I'm going to be doing, hopefully with you guys, trying to do some more, maybe some online practical demonstrations of how to develop context and check decisions. And just spreading the word, basically, and spreading the decision-making side of it, because until we change that, we're not going to change the world. So yeah, that's it. And that's how we bring about change, is just talking amongst ourselves and spreading the knowledge amongst ourselves until there are enough of us insisting that the organizations make the change. So yeah, just talk to your friends.
Well, Sarah, I can't say thank you enough
Thank
for
you.
spending time with me this morning. It's been really lovely to meet you and learn more about what you're doing, and just so much inspiration from your father's work, your work, and how you're taking it forward. And I think also just a reminder that, particularly to those of us in the U.S., Europe, not everything comes out of Silicon Valley or London or Brussels. Some of the most amazing work is people who are in context doing stuff, figuring it out, making trial and error in places where these things are really happening. And so just to really appreciate the scope of where people are coming up with great ideas and where they're being applied. And just to see so much success here in Zimbabwe is just incredibly inspiring, and wish you the best and are excited about future collaborations with you.
So much.
So,
Thanks, Felix.
Yeah,
It's nice
absolutely.
to be here.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Great for having you tune in with us today with the Regenerative School. We look forward to seeing you online and having emails with Sarah and I and everybody else in the network. But hope you're well, and we'll speak again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.